Purple party people at? Where they at? Get down. Welcome to episode 104 of Amari Purple Talk, a podcast where I share my thoughts on the Prince musical singularity. I'm Richard Cole, your imaginationist, comic book myth builder, and the Vic Sage of Funk. Thank you once again for tuning in. Please leave your comments in the comment section below, and please download on your favorite podcast platform. If you're listening on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And please continue to send your questions or topic suggestions for Amari Purple Talk. And how you can do that is by clicking the link in the show notes below, either the website link for Amari Communications, or by following me on Twitter at RichardCole_now using the hashtag Amari Purple Talk. And your question or topic might just be read in a future episode. All right, so apologies for the delay. The previous episode was kind of late in launching, and I kind of wanted to give that a chance to breathe. So thank you for everyone that is tuned in. Also, thanks to Walter Johnson for his guest appearance on that episode. So we'll try to get him back. Hopefully we'll try for the end of the year. We know we got the holidays coming up, and, you know, I've got my family, he's got his family, so, you know, and plus it's the holidays, so we kind of want to get all that, you know, squared away, and, well, we'll just see if we can get one more appearance from him before the end of the year, but definitely 2022. There's also another musician friend of mine, spoke with him about a week ago. He'll be in the clear around 2022 also. Plus, there's other guests that I would like to have on the show as well. I was hoping to kind of get at least one or two prominent guests on before the end of the year. But again, looks like next year we'll have more time to get that going. So stay tuned. We'll get, you know, as news develops, I will let you know. Also, too, I know there's been some concerns regarding Apple Music and Spotify. I know a lot of listeners have not been able to get current episodes up. I'm not sure if that's something that's changed within Libsyn or certain policy changes with those respective platforms that I need to devote time to kind of, you know, I guess fill out additional paperwork or whatever their updates or policy changes are and conforming to those. Look into that. But like I said, you can always listen on YouTube. So I'll make sure I get the word out via social media. You can still listen via YouTube. I just received an email from a rep from Amazon Music about expanding the podcast to get more listeners to listen that way. So thank you, Amazon listeners, for your support in that area. So we'll get more through, it's definitely on Audible, but also to maybe hopefully getting this on Amazon Music as well. So as things develop again, I will let you know. And with that out of the way, let's get started on to this week's topic. This week's topic is all about Emancipation. So this album is celebrating its anniversary of release this week. I believe it was on, is it on the 21st that the album was released? And let me quickly fact check that real quick. Actually, November 19th. So by the time this posts, it will be 24 hours away from its anniversary release of November 19th of 1996. And this was an album I know at the time I was very excited to get. Um, I remember, I don't know how many months prior, maybe a year prior or maybe 9 months prior to its official release. I remember seeing Prince on the cover of Esquire magazine. And it was, what was it? Versace had designed the outfits he was wearing for that. And Richard Avedon, one of my absolute favorite photographers. And for those that don't know, I am a alum of the Academy of Art College. It is now the Academy of Art University. But it was studying photography there, and that was one of the names that would keep coming up in different classes. And when I got to check out his work, I was blown away. So definitely one of my favorites. He's photographed Prince, that classic 1983 cover with him in Vanity. That's Richard Avedon. There's some photos of the Beatles that he's done that I've liked. Also, the cover of Fresh by Sly and the Family Stone. He photographed that album cover. But this isn't a podcast about Richard Avedon's photography. But that was one of the things I took notice with this Esquire magazine from, I think, like around 1995. And I might still have that. But reading the article, it mentioned, the whole thing with Prince wanting to get out of his Warner Brothers contract. That fight was still going on. Slave was still written across his cheek. And, we were getting a little bit more insight as to what was going on at the time. Right around 95, it was crystal clear that this was a way to try to get out of that. And it was kind of nearing that stage. So it was about a couple of albums away from getting that freedom from Warner Brothers. So this was sort of the, through this interview, we were getting this information for the first time. So, Gold Experience had been out, and unfortunately it came and went, even though that was a strong album. But it mentioned that the Exodus album had been complete, and that upon fulfillment of the recording contract with Warner Brothers, that he was going to release this, like, I think at the time it said like 50 song album titled Emancipation. And it's like, oh, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for, through all the contract obligation, the Gold Experience not getting much love, even though that was originally, I would say, in, theory, originally Emancipation, not necessarily the title, but that was the album to where this was, Prince feeling free, the freedom, but it just got caught up in the whole contract obligation, and it was kind of utilized as a tool to get him out of his contract. So, but Emancipation, this was a statement. And it's like, wow, 50 songs, was he working on this, between 93 and now? This was stuff he was holding back. What was this about? So fast forward to November 19th. I remember MTV, or was it VH1? I don't know, it might have been MTV. But I guess that quote unquote release party. And I remember tuning in to that, or I don't think I had cable then at that particular moment, but I might have had somebody tape it. And then when I watched the tape, with, sort of the pre-show activities, people being interviewed, and they were playing snippets from the album. And I guess at the point where the tape began for me, It was playing joint to joint, like the kind of the near the end part of it. And I'm like, oh, this is it. Because I think we had seen Betcha by Golly Wow. I think that was out at that time. Or maybe the video was premiering. But either way, to me, that was like, okay, well, he's doing a cover. He's never really done that before on record. So it was good. It's one of those things to me, and we'll discuss it later in the episode. But it's one of those things where, it's like, okay, this is the first single. It's just to let you know I'm back. And then you get the album, and it's like, oh, yeah, he's back. That kind of a thing. So, but yeah, that was, exciting. And I think the opening part of the concert or that show, they have the little bit of they play the snippet from Slave, and I like that beat and that groove. And I was like, oh, okay. And but like I said, we'll get into that part of it a little later. So let's dive in. Well, that's actually an overview of the album. So also, I guess, again, the historical significance of this was definitely, the first step, in full emancipation mode, and this is the very thing that shaped Prince's worldview, in going forward. And kind of touch on that a little bit later, too. But recently with all the hype about its anniversary, and it seems like every time I go on social media, it's like every day, there's a new Prince milestone to celebrate. That it's hard to keep up now. It's like, okay, this week is the 40th anniversary of this album. All right, this week is the 10th anniversary of this album. Oh, on this day in 1995, he released this single. But in 1982, on this day, he dropped this single. And then on this day, he dropped this single in 82. He dropped this single in 85. He dropped this single in 2014. It's a lot to keep up with. A lot. So, but Emancipation, I think, has been getting a lot more social media traction this week. And I don't know if it was a divisive album, but I was kind of getting that impression, just kind of reading the comments about it, how, it's 3 albums and it's so long. Let's whittle it down to 1 album. Where meanwhile, it's like, oh, let's get that original Crystal Ball. We want that 3 album set. And I don't think it's a thing of the music suffering. I know other comments, oh, but, things that were going on in R&B in 96 was a lot better, and this is nowhere near that. And to me, I don't think that it was Prince's intention to copy what was going on in 1996 at that time. There's the interview in Rolling Stone around that time, promoting the album, where he says, he wasn't worried about anything that was going on in R&B. He might have raised an eyebrow at R. Kelly, but it's like a thing where Prince never felt threatened. He didn't feel like, oh, they're going to think I'm out of touch or out of step. And you have to realize, and this is no slight to, any DJs or producers, where we've, because, I've had my drum machines, I still use computers or whatever. And, it's cool, we can do that, but Prince is on another level. It's like, yeah, I can play guitar a bit. I can play bass a bit, but, I'm not a drummer. So, yeah, I need a drum machine, I'm not that great with keyboards, but, I can do enough to get what I'm thinking out. And that's fine, you know. But Prince is full on musician, you know. And I mean, just totally gifted. And I think at that particular point, it's easier to understand when you get to the sort of 2000s era, when you get to the musicology period. You get to where the whole, real music by real musicians thing, and you get it. But in 96, it's kind of the thing to where, well, yeah, we're used to drum machine Prince, but, we know he does a lot more than that. He's not dependent on those computers. By Diamonds and Pearls, he had basically thrown out the drum machines, pretty much. But, now they're slowly coming back in because now with Emancipation, you've got Kirk Johnson coming in to help program things, or, maybe he kind of had a little bit of an ear toward what was happening in the 90s to kind of explain it to Prince, to where Prince can go, okay, well, what if we utilize this type of drum program, but we did this with it? Or I'm going to put, Eric Leeds on sax here, or Walter Chancellor on sax there. And, I'm going to play bass here and do this. So where you kind of go through these different, colors or emotions with it. So, I think, with the album's intent versus listener and fan expectation, granted, there's a lot of fans of Emancipation that love the whole concept of it. And I think that's what gets lost in the translation, to where people are like, oh, you can whittle it down. But remember, we've never been in this territory before. And what I mean by that is, okay, there are those of us that are, like I said, are musicians, or we understand the music business, and there are some of us out there that understand it better than others. I have a basic knowledge of it. I've encountered it to a certain point. I have friends that have way more experience. And then there are the people that we look up to that even have way more experience than that, whether it's our Jill Jones or St. Paul or Andre Simone or The Time or Jammin' Lewis. That's a whole nother level of music industry experience. There's some podcasters that have worked on certain levels with record companies. But for the most part, regardless of what level our understanding is on, we've never been here, because he's taken us through this journey. And it's not only just a journey through music, it's a business education model. It's a marketing model, because we've never been there before. We just understand that, okay, this is the single on radio. And then now you can buy the single in stores. Oh, well, now here comes the album. And, and depending on the artist, oh, here's that artist on, so-and-so's talk show performing and talking about the record. Oh, here they are on the cover of Rolling Stone. Oh, here they are on the cover of Billboard. Oh, they're number 1 on Billboard now, or they're number 58 on Billboard. And, that's just it. And that's what we've been programmed to understand. If we see you on MTV in heavy rotation, you're successful, or, we're looking at Billboard and we're like, oh, okay, whether he's number 40 or number 1, oh, okay, then, they're doing okay or whatever. But this album wasn't designed to be like all the other albums. It wasn't designed to say, yeah, it's 1996, but here, I'm going to have that death row sound. Or here, I'm going to have P. Diddy remix, 2 or 3 tracks here. Even though I think with, things like with Shock G, QD3, But that was still sort of, well, the exception was Shock G because Warner Brothers vetoed that remix. But with QD3, that was under Warner Brothers, and then that was with the Come album and trying to promote Let It Go and things like that. And granted, even some of the stuff before, the Junior Vasquez stuff and Shep Pettibone remixes and things of that nature, that was part of the game. That's how the game was played. And whether Prince wanted to or not, that's one of those things to where, yeah, he had a lot of power as an artist to say, well, okay, well, I want this single out. But the compromise was, oh, well, you got to have 2 or 3 remixes of that song. And now it's 1996. Here's Emancipation. And granted, I think there were a couple of remixes, but they were more in a controlled environment, where he had whoever, the engineer of the moment was, do those remixes. He was supervising those remixes full on. And he did it at his discretion, not because the record company wanted him to. It was because he had the power to make that choice. So, and I think with Emancipation, it was just designed to be a statement in a lot of different areas. So again, that thing of the album's intention versus the listener or fan expectations. Like I said, I kind of covered some of my own expectations. I wasn't under the illusion that, okay, now Prince is free, but it's going to go back to sounding like 17 Days, or it's going to go back to, it's going to be Sign of the Times 2.0. I never was under that illusion, but given that 2-3 year struggle, now you're in a position to do whatever you want. What is that going to sound like? What is that going to feel like? And I think overall, and just kind of going back to hearing that little snippet of Joint to Joint, it's like, yeah, it definitely sounds like Prince. It's definitely the produced, written, arranged, and performed by Prince that we all know. But yeah, there's an excitement in the track, that was more so than I think anything on, I would say, at least Come. I think because a lot of those songs were interchangeable. Everything from Come to the Gold Experience, Chaos and Disorder, on Emancipation, things on Emancipation, for at least maybe 25% of it, it was all interchangeable. If you've seen any of those old pictures of, I guess, the original set list for Emancipation, and you saw where a lot of the songs ended up on Chaos and Disorder, a lot of, or 1 or 2 of the songs, I don't know, was it on Come, I think? But yeah, but like I said, the songs could have gone anywhere and did end up anywhere with it. But when I actually got the album, and granted, yeah, 3 albums it takes a while to fully digest. So, I get the argument that, say, if something like Crystal Ball had that stayed its original 3-disc set, no matter how much a lot of us would have enjoyed it, yeah, it would have taken a while to get into it, because it's a lot. That in that case, there was a lot of funk. There was a lot of just great songs. That was a creative high. And I think, to me, Emancipation is just as high creatively. But it was a lot to digest. And not that it, put me off of the album. I never had any ill feelings about it. Again, yeah, some songs I like more than others. But I could say the same thing about Sign of the Times, which is, yeah, that's my absolute favorite Prince album. And I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of the song Slow Love. There's a bunch of, you could have taken that off, put Shockadelica on it. If you just had to have a ballad there, knowing what we know now, Crucial could have still gone on and you still could have kept the door on it, no matter what Prince would have thought. But that's just my opinion. But there are a lot of people that dig Slow Love too. And again, that's why music is subjective. But I think because now of, I don't forget how many, about 2 or 3 years now, uh, or going on 3 years since the reissue of Emancipation, just the excitement and the buzz off of that reissue, it had me go back. I mean, I didn't get the reissue or the vinyl because I still have my original CD set of it, but it had me break it out because I hadn't listened to it in, I can't even remember the last time I did listen to at least the Emancipation as an album. Now there's been songs that I've made CD playlists out of and would revisit certain songs occasionally, but I really hadn't spent time with the album. I would say, probably not since maybe late 90s, probably. Yeah, maybe late 90s, I would guess. Um, but revisiting that album, just a couple of years ago, just like I said, off the hype of, the reissue, and I'm like, this is really, it's really good. To me, a lot of it still holds up. And again, it's not like, maybe some of the production style might be a little dated compared to what you can do now with drum machines and computers and different, software and stuff. But it's still a strong album. And when you again look at what the album's intention, the concept of it, remember, this is a concept album still. When, this is an era where I think, maybe hip hop and possibly Radiohead was still doing concept albums. But, nobody else in R&B, there was no R&B concept albums. At least if there were, they just revolved around sex anyway, in which by that particular time, R&B had just been so overdone with it. That was sort of the beginning of that, where it's like the romance is now gone from it. The diversity is gone from it, because now it's an era of, oh my God, if R. Kelly wasn't producing everything, everybody had to sound like R. Kelly. Or, it's like, oh, well, yeah, it's an R&B thing, but Diddy has to remix everything, 20 times. And like I said, while to me, there was still a lot to enjoy about that period. But I think I was just gravitating more towards hip hop and just whatever Prince was doing. Just straight R&B. I think, well, to me, D'Angelo and Erykah Badu sort of saved R&B for me because they brought something fresh to the equation with it. So again, Emancipation wasn't trying to compete with what Silk was doing or what Jodeci was doing or, I don't even think, not even what Boys to Men was doing, not even really what D'Angelo was doing. It was just a thing of Prince was like, this is it. And again, it's a concept album. He's now, a newlywed. So it's not, it's not the Prince from Purple Rain. It's not the Prince from Dirty Mind anymore. It's not the Doomy Baby Prince anymore. This is married man Prince. And, there's sort of this joke in rock music where, when you get married, the game is up. Your albums get boring. To me, it's like, you know, the solo era Beatles, can make Domestic Bliss work and sell on record. It worked. Sitting on your farm, you know, there's still a freshness to it. They still made that work and still made it sell to one degree or another. They somehow made that work, but um, but Marvin Gaye had to have all this drama and turmoil to write about, that side of marriage. And even though that didn't sell, but yet and still, to me, Terrence Trent D'Arby and George Michael owe their careers, entire careers, to the Hear My Dear album. Yeah, I said it. But yeah, they owe their entire careers to that album. So this was the thing. And two, he was into, Egyptology. He was into ancient Egypt and everything. And I mean, I am too. At that time, it was kind of like at, very early stages. I just had like a rudimentary, basic knowledge, a basic knowledge of Egyptology. Just a basic, not like what I know now, but yeah. But I mean, seeing that he was into those things too was like, okay, and to have that sort of, where, the three discs, I guess, are supposed to be like the pyramids of Giza, or it could be the belt of Orion, which is in complete alignment, or the pyramids were built in complete alignment, to Orion's belt. I mean, that's amazing. Like I said, nobody was doing concept albums. And to have it be about family and to have that sort of cosmic nature to it. What else? The diversity of the material. It's about love. It's about life. It's about freedom. And again, it's about ownership. And again, it's the definition of funk. Themes that, Prince wanted to explore when he was writing his autobiography, the beautiful ones. Only the introduction really fully got to touch on that. And, Emancipation was the beginning of all of that. So again, music is subjective. What you like, I might not like. And again, there are people that like, I just can't get into a lot of the songs on Emancipation. All I would say is give it another shot, give it another chance, and have those things in mind. Like I said, wherever we were mentally in 1996, like I said, it's, because, Maxwell was having hits on the radio, and D'Angelo was having hits on the radio, and Jodeci, and whoever it was. And it was like, that was some great music. Whatever hip hop was doing, whatever Biggie, whatever Tupac, whatever Scarface was doing, Ice Cube, Outkast, whatever they were doing in that period, it was great music. Wu-Tang Clan. Whew. I mean, whatever they were doing in that time, it was good. And like I said, that was part of the machine. And, that was contemporary. But with an artist like Prince, to me, that's where I thought he should have been, with Diamonds and Pearls, with even the, the Symbol album, to me, where I kind of struggled with the hip hop because, like I said, there was so much. And there's no slight to, Tony M or, actually, I think too, the hip hop or what little hip hop that's on Emancipation. I get what he was doing. I get what Prince was doing, because you had New York that was just, whether it was Rakim, KRS-One, Big Daddy Kane, Grandmaster Flash, Furious Five, you name it, Wu-Tang, God, there's so many, Beastie Boys, so much was coming out of New York. Then, now you've got, by that time, late 80s, NWA, and of course, Pac, Digital Underground, Ice-T. There's so much good hip hop coming out of both of these coasts, and then it started to branch out to where, Ghetto Boys, Outkast, the whole, all of it was just amazing music. And I get it. Prince was once again reaching back into his community, and it's like, from his point of view, once he started to embrace rap, to say, okay, well, let me put some Minneapolis folks down. Let me get them on. Give them a little shine and an opportunity where, yeah, here they are competing with everything that's coming out of these different locales. That was churning out such great music in the late 80s and through the 90s, and still more coming through the door, and a hip hop scene in Minneapolis isn't getting love, so I get that. But sometimes, too, the weight of being Prince, to me, sometimes being Prince has to take precedence over, you giving somebody a shot, where it's like, okay, you could have just finance the record, and let them do what they do and let them sell it, But given that he was trying to use his platform to give a lot of these cats exposure, I do understand that. But, I get it. Like, I guess the guest rapper, Scrappy D, I think that's his name. To me, yeah, I get the rap on Da Da Da. I get it. I think it works better than Mr. Happy, I think. But as far as like a groove, Mr. Happy is kind of, it's got some funk there. Again, every track has a bit of a freshness. To me, even the weakest tracks have more of a higher energy. It feels freer. Again, remembering the interview that's in Musician Magazine, again, right around the time of promoting the album, and the interviewer challenged Prince on, like, well, okay, you're free now, but I don't hear anything that's free. Where like, I guess he was looking for something that was just going to come so far from left field. But Prince's counter to that was, it wasn't so much as trying to find a new sound. It's just that when you're not under the pressure of a record company to say, okay, well, here's your album, and you got to have 2 or 3 hits on that album. So now you got to start thinking about, okay, now I got to compete with whatever's in the top 10. How can I be better than that? Or how can I go so far to the left with it? And granted, Prince can write a hit song in his sleep, at least, especially at this stage. He can do it. But it's like, why would you want to? The whole purpose of music is to do what you feel. It's just, we live in an age where everything creative is commercial now. It's commercialized. If this was ancient Egypt, then it wouldn't be about who's the most popular, this or that. Your job as an artist was to creatively reflect the society, reflect the culture that you live in. And when any one of us now, whenever it starts, being a kid, and it doesn't have to do with just music. You could be a writer, you can do illustrations, whatever your creative medium is, it's born out of that need to create. You're not thinking about millions of dollars. You're not thinking about being the best. You're thinking about being the best at doing what you do, but not being better than someone else. It's just because in your heart of hearts, what you create, you're the best at creating it because you know it best. You have an intimate relationship with it. But, whether it was the 19th century, the 20th century, and snowballed into getting worse in the 21st century, it's a thing of, it's all about commercialization of everything. So if this this media outlet says this is popular, then us as just ordinary folks are supposed to go, oh, yeah, that's popular. Yeah, 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 yeah. Sure, sure, sure. Buy it. Let's get it. I got to have it. Instead of looking at things subjectively or sometimes objectively and just say, hey, this is speaking to me on a level, whether it's the lyrics of a song, whether the music, helps you deal with a certain mood that you're in. That was the feeling. That was the concept. To me, Emancipation as an album is just as important as Songs in the Key of Life or George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. They're very spiritual albums. They both, talk about life or spirituality on some level. And I think Emancipation is effective at doing the absolute same thing. It's just in a more 90s context, not a 90s style or a 90s sound. But, like I said, what's been said in Songs in the Key of Life, Stevie has already said it. What George Harrison said in All Things Must Pass, he's already said it. It's just that this is Prince's way of saying it. And I think that's more effective to me. And I think that's why the album works on so many levels. For me personally, again, I wasn't really going through, I guess what I would say I'm going through now as far as, the sort of employer-employee relationship, because I think at that time, 96, I had gone back to school, to acquire the skills to be effective at doing jobs that I was very good at after I completed it. It's just that this last sort of decade, I found myself in a position to where it, A, wasn't my first choice, folks, and B, I have been here, I would say, I would have been in it, I would say 8 years longer than I should have. And due to certain circumstances, if things were a little bit different, the minute a certain circumstance would have, or the minute a certain circumstance, which I won't go into detail about, the minute it changed, this place should have been in the rearview mirror as well. But like I say, we all have to do what we have to do to survive. And you've heard me speak about this when we've talked about on the show freedom, ownership, and the definition of funk. There's nothing wrong with responsibility. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. But it doesn't mean that you can't dream. It doesn't mean that you can't strive for something. It doesn't mean that it's too late to do something. It's just that you now have to learn how to leverage things to manipulate it to your advantage. And again, if it's a part-time thing, then yeah, you handling your responsibility, you're keeping your lights on, you're keeping food on the table, but that spare time, you hustling. You got that hustle on to achieve that goal. And I mean legally, folks. Achieve that goal. If it's a full-time thing, then you're trying to find that leverage or that work-life balance that allows you to live the lifestyle that you want to lead. And it's about being happy in the place where you're standing. It's about where you make a difference. So, yeah, 1996, I really, it was inspiring. But it was kind of a thing that where, yeah, I was inspired. Like, oh, yeah, so I guess if I ever felt like I was in that situation, I could use that as an example, or as inspiration to say, oh, I get what he's talking about. And how does that information integrate into my personal life? So here we are. We fast forward to 2021. And yeah, I think I found myself over these last couple of years leaning on this album and its energy and its frequencies and some of its lyrics to say, you know, yeah, I have to keep striving. I mean, I know I put a post on Twitter to where I said I wanted to be in the position, or I was hoping to have been in the position to put up the GIF from Prince's performance on the NAACP Awards of Emancipation, the part where he breaks the chains. It's like Emancipation, break the chain, break the chain. And I wanted to put that GIF up because I thought I was close. I was in the running. I guess it was a narrow race, but, congratulations to the person that beat me out and got the job. Cool. But I'm still in the hunt, folks. But like I said, I lean towards that as inspiration. That whole 93, 96 era is inspiring, to strive. Some of my original plans are still, still in effect, folks. So it's just a matter of, again, finding that leverage, finding that work-life balance to eventually break the chain, to be seen in the purple rain, so to speak. But other than that, I know around 96 posts, I think I was like a lot of people. Side two. Disc 2 to me was the strongest. But again, as I've been listening to this over the last couple of years now, and I'm definitely going to revisit this album the rest of this week, and maybe into next week as well. But like I said, there's a lot of energy in these tracks. Musically, I mean, the guitar and Damned If I Do, woo, you take things for granted, especially with Prince. It's just like, oh, Prince is great. But then when you really get to sit down and pay attention, it's like, damn, he's great. This is it. Like I said, for me, disc 1 and disc 2, I played more than disc 3. But now I kind of lean more towards disc 3. New World, those lyrics, I think they have I think they still hold up for now with everything that's going on in the world, because the world does change. It changes a lot. And it's like, yeah, when the lines blur, how we going to make it in this brave new world? Love for one another. And here we are, it's 2021. And no matter through which lens those lines have blurred, I think as much as we talk about coming together as a people or one people, there's so much division. There's still, the fans of racism, going around, and all this other stuff. It's weird. It's like, yeah, there's people pushing a love for one another, but it's not pushing it for it to be organic. It's like, there's some people that have certain agendas for things, and it's just getting heavy, but it's creating more division than it is understanding. And sometimes too, depending on who's doing the speaking, it's just causing more division. And it should just be a thing of, it has to be organic. It has to be given the type of space that allows an opposing side to see things as well. Or just plain listening. And then sometimes, yeah, you got to stand up and fight for yourself. And sometimes you have to stand toe to toe and defend yourself as well. But, like I said, those, the lyrics in New World, they still definitely hold up. To me, style, that's motivation, about, do your own thing. For me, this week or this month, this year, Face Down is an anthem. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's like I said, and disc 2, that could be a single album all to itself. Just it covers more romantic ground. It covers, more of the marital bliss ground. Maybe one or two songs kind of speak on society or like, I don't know. I would say email probably. That might be commentary. I don't know. I don't know. My computer's more commentary, and I think that still works today. I think that still holds up. Um, the covers, as we know now, Prince always wanted to do it, and I think that was buried in a sentence in an interview somewhere where he's always wanted to do covers, but he was always advised against it by Warner Brothers. But now we know after reading The Beautiful Ones, and if you haven't read it by now, just spoiler alert, go buy it, go read it. It's great. But the For You album, he wanted to do a cover of Send in the Clowns. What would have sounded like? Is that in the vault? If they ever do the For You Super Deluxe Edition, if that exists, I want to hear it. Because, I was a kid when that was a hit song. I don't even know who did it. Somebody help me out in the comments on who did that song originally. But long story short, I was never a fan of it. So there. So I want to hear this cover and how it would compare to the original version. So if there's a For You Super Deluxe, make that happen. Just for that alone. Just for that reason alone. Like I said, da da da. Like I said, I get the hip hop part of it, but I would be interested to know if there's a different version with just Prince on it and what his thoughts are and his commentary. I get, again, he was trying to reach a certain audience or tap into a certain frequency with the hip hop on it. And it's a great song. I've always enjoyed it since day one. But again, like I said, I wonder what if there's a different version with just Prince and just all his lyrics, or if there's more to it, or if he just had that bit, or if it was written specifically for the hip hop part of it. What else? Sleep Around, that track. That was one I was kind of just not really feeling until this week. And I'll tell you, for those of you that are sort of like, oh, it's overwhelming. Oh, it's 3 discs long and I can't get into every song. Try this. If you have the streaming or Bluetooth capabilities for your car, put this album, whether you got iTunes or Apple Music, Tidal, whatever, Spotify, if it gives you the option to shuffle, just put this on your car, your Bluetooth in your car, and hit shuffle. And in this way, you're not confined so much to you listening to an album and trying to embrace the album as a concept, but you can deal with the song as it happens. Because I think sequencing an album is not an easy thing to do. And I think with how the songs are sequenced here, with the exception of disc 2, it's kind of hard to get in because of the genre shifting so much. It's kind of like, okay, now you got this R&B ballad. Okay, now you got this kind of pop tune. Now we're going into swing, which, again, for those that are not embracing the song Courtin' Time, but if you were by the late 90s embracing the sort of comeback of swing during that period, did not Prince do this first in 96? Did he not give you a little swing, big band swing number on this one? Like I said, it gives you a chance to really embrace the song, or you have more of a chance to embrace the song or get into it more if you just put it on shuffle and just see if you don't get a different reaction to the songs on it. But yeah, Sleep Around was definitely one of those until I did that this week. to where, because I remember, I would listen to it and it's like, okay. And then I remember the credits and it samples GQ's Disco Nights, which was a song I loved back when it was out. And it was about 1979, 1980. I loved that, but it's like I just didn't get the feel of it. But when I kind of had a chance to listen to it and the lossless audio and everything that they're doing now with these streaming services, then it's like I got to hear the sample a little bit clearer. Now, I still prefer the original song, Disco Nights. I still prefer that over Sleep Around. But the one thing that really made me finally really pay attention to this song is beyond clearly hearing the sample now is when it goes into that Prince mode of where, okay, this is the Prince song, and then this is the part where he's going to spend the next 5 minutes jamming at this point. It's when it gets to that part of it that it's like, yeah, this is still Prince. And then that led me back to Joint to Joint. And, In This Bed I Scream. So you were still getting classic Prince. You were still getting that. But it was, fresher. It was newer. It was Prince now, as it was back in 1986 anyway. So it's that New World, that's another one. Slave is another one. Human Body, Face Down. So you were still getting those Prince elements. You weren't going to get Purple Rain Prince ever again. You didn't. The minute Around the World in the Day came out, the game was up on that one. Somebody. Yeah, that works as an R&B track, and it should have done a lot better than what it did. But again, like I said, I know Right Back Here in My Arms, another one. That was one that I immediately loved when I first heard the album. Jam of the Year is pretty good. It's weird as a lead-off track. It's weird as a track one. It does work. But I think if it was less polished, maybe if it had a little bit more Madhouse to it, that it would have been stronger and a stronger lead into the second and third track on it. I don't know. But like I said, it's 3 albums. You're going to have some filler. That's inevitable. You're going to have stuff that's not going to be as strong. There's stuff on the White Album that's not as strong as it could have been. But it's the White Album. It's great. Same thing with Emancipation. It's great. But why did it kind of get lost in the shuffle? What prevented this from becoming a classic album? And these are just my theories on it. Some of it might have some relevance. Some might. Some of you might have different ideas or opinions of it. Would definitely love to hear those in the comments. But I think first and foremost, it was the whole name change thing. That was the thing for me personally. Because to me, to come out with an album called Emancipation, it should have been by Prince. The artist formerly known as, or the artist, or the symbol, or whatever. Whatever name was it, Slave, whatever. It didn't, it was like, well, why are you still the artist formerly known as if you're free? Now, we find out years later that it was the publishing contract that he was still fighting to get 100% control of at that point. Yeah, cool, he was free from Warner Brothers. But for those that didn't know that in 1996, it was like, okay, you back, so why aren't you Prince still? That was still kind of hard for people to understand and grasp. So I think, in this age that we now call branding, I think that really hurt to not, because that would have had a bigger impact to me. I think that would have sold way more albums. It would have garnered so much more attention to say, oh, well, okay, he's Prince and he has this album called Emancipation. Well, why was that? and you would have had something. You would have had more of a platform. So when it came to the Rolling Stone interview, or the Musician Magazine interview, or you're on the Today Show, or you were on Rosie O'Donnell, whoever, that would have been the perfect platform to say, look, this is why I did what I did, but I'm back, Prince now, artist rights, let's make this happen. And I think that, you can see now, with when it was reissued, it's Prince, Emancipation. You don't have it on the album cover or anything, but it's just like we knew it was Prince. We never went in, oh, do you have that new record by the artist formerly known as Prince? It's like, no, you got that new Prince album, Emancipation. So, I think the branding definitely got in the way of that. I think, or if he was going to stay the artist, maybe title it something else. But, we understand now why, but we probably don't know the logic behind it, where it's Emancipation, but it's still the artist formerly known as Prince. The second, and I think one of two of the actual things that really derailed this album had to do with a lot of the tragedy in Prince's life. Because this album is supposed to be a celebration of life, of love, of God, spirit. There's so much positivity in this album. And I think that's, another thing too, where, with hip hop, there was so much, that, yeah, a lot of it was about the party, but then there's a lot of it about, just the ills of society. And that's pretty heavy. And then at the same time, you've got, contemporary R&B, to where, like I said, again, a lot of the romance went out of the window. It's just about, hey, let's just get down and do it. Or it was never about monogamous relationships. It's always, it's kind of like old blues. It's like somebody's always still sneaking out the back door, or sneaking into the back door. Or it's like, I don't care about your man, I don't care about your woman type thing. But there was so much positivity in this album, that to have something so tragic as to what happened to Prince and Mayte's child, and again, to have to go out into the world and pretend like everything was okay, that's some heavy energy to have to burden. That is a very heavy, heavy thing to have to shoulder. And, I'm not in their heads, I'm not in their pockets. But I would say, if it was me, and then again too, you're still dealing with a record company. You still, even though he was free, it wasn't like he owned his own distribution model. He was dependent upon EMI at this time, even though it's like, cool, I get to keep my masters and all of that. Again, sadly, it's not family business, it's show business. And, if the contract said, come hell or high water, you got to have so many copies of this album delivered to us so we can distribute by this date and time. Maybe if it was a position to where that deal had not been done yet, or if he was able to control his own distribution model, then, like I said, if it was me, and if I had those two factors riding on it, then I would have just postponed it, and, or sadly, maybe even shelved it, till another time. Just given the magnitude and the weight, because that's heavy emotional turmoil that you're dealing with. And to, on the one hand, you could say it was bravery to have to do it, but at the same time, even as the rumors were swirling, it's like, dude, why are you on Oprah right now? And if you are on Oprah right now, why aren't you talking about this? Why aren't you addressing this? to protect, because it just created this, it put a big dark cloud over it, or a little bit of a dark cloud over it to me, to where I think, again, if, like I said, barring any type of strong contractual agreement, or if money has already changed hands and it's like you got no choice, then it's like, cool, put this album in the stores, let this positive energy still go out, but take some time for yourself and your wife to grieve. Give yourself that period to grieve and heal spiritually. And then, you can come out, say, this dropped in November, come back in January, February, or March. And, you got 3 albums here, it's not going anywhere. But then again, like I said, we're talking about Prince, and he probably already had 6, 7 albums ready to drop again, as, of course, as evidenced by the liner notes on Emancipation, The Truth, Crystal Ball, God knows what else was on there ready to drop. But again, even if it was like, what, let's just, do some small, intimate dates, not a big, huge tour, promote the album the best way you can, or, if you were able to issue a strong statement that could have gotten ahead of the press, to where, like, look, this is what's going down, but when we come back, these topics are off limits. And we know sometimes the media can still be cruel, heartless folks and still want to ask anyway. But, if you're going to have a platform on Oprah, that would have been able to shut that down. But again, this is all hindsight, alternate universe. And like I said, I'm not in their heads, I'm not in their hearts, and I'm not in their pockets. So, what happened and couldn't have happened any other way. And, but again, that, to me, that was one of 2 of the main things I think really derailed this. The branding is just my speculation. But yeah, definitely the tragedy definitely affect the trajectory of really promoting this album. Because I think if things had gone differently, I think there would have been a lot more positive energy to get behind this album and really get it across to the world. The second and last thing was the absorption of EMI and the elimination of its black music department. Because I think, what was it, Universal that bought out EMI Records. And this was the British company. They own Capitol Records here in the USA. Its subsidiary label, Parlophone, was a label that the Beatles were on until they started Apple Records. D'Angelo's Brown Sugar album was distributed by EMI. And when it folded, I think it was in late 86 or early 97 when it folded. But that shut down the whole distribution and marketing model for this album. So whatever momentum that this album had, or even if it was sort of slipping in the charts a bit, whatever momentum could have been regained, that was done after EMI folded into Universal. So nothing will kill a great album or a good album or even a bad album faster than a regime change at a record label. Whether it's bought out or not, just a regime change, period. So the A&R person that is working like a genius to make your album number one, if they quit or if they've been fired for whatever reason, that next person may not be as sympathetic to your project because they'll have their own agenda. They'll have their own artists that they want to push across. So, sometimes you have that. And a lot of great albums fall to the wayside because of that dynamic. But here, this was an entire buyout and to help consolidate, eliminating an entire music division of that company. And it put a lot of people out of the pool. And it definitely, shut down any momentum that Emancipation had. And then with no label distribution, the tour support was useless because it's like, well, now if you can't go to the record store and buy a fresh copy of this album, there was no point in touring. So I'm thinking that, as speculation, that is probably why when the sort of Love for One Another tour took place, or no, Jam of the Year tour took place, that there were hardly any songs from Emancipation that was played during that tour. Where I think, again, if the whole distribution and marketing machine was still in full effect, that, yeah, I think with that tour, there would have been more songs to play from Emancipation instead of it being another sort of greatest hits tour with just 2 or 3 Emancipation songs on it. So that is it. So I guess, in hindsight, hey, the Sony reissue, it gives listeners access to, either revisit it, re-examine it. Gives a lot of new people to come on board and discover it. If you this might be your second, third Prince album for a lot of new people in your collection, and it's definitely one that I recommend highly. It's one of definitely of his post classic '80s period that I do highly recommend. To me, it is one of his best '90s albums. So yeah, definitely check it out. I think it should also be reissued again and marketed, maybe like in a few years' time. I'm sure that, the estate and Sony have a lot of different ideas for, super deluxe editions and standalone projects like Welcome to America, those things. But I would say at some point in between, if there's a lull in, big, high, profile Prince projects that they're, working on, reissue this and market it as a standalone release. Whether you might want to do a deluxe edition, with some bonus tracks, or even a standalone. But either way, both, standalone or super deluxe, include a companion book, kind of like what we got with, I would say more so along the lines of the, sort of the Beatles super deluxe editions. A book that chronicles this album's journey from, the whole 1993 period, the name change, talk about the Come album, the Gold Experience, talk about what led up to the creation of this album, talk about what happened in the aftermath, to really get, because again, this is the first step. This was the first major step, or even the first major victory in Prince's artistic freedom and the mission of his course to ownership of his publishing and eventual ownership of his masters, as far as the classic 80 Warner Brothers period goes. This was the first, and it's gotten lost in the shuffle. Sort of not as bad as Most Beautiful Girl in the World, because that was the first taste that said, oh, okay, I can do this myself. I want more. So yeah, I mean, this is, again, something that should be revisited, reevaluated, re-examined. And again, it's 3 albums. Again, not every song is going to knock you out, but there's something for everybody. Like I said, I enjoy it. Like I said, I enjoy playing it on shuffle in the car, but like as I was listening to it during show prep, I popped in disc 3 and, I just go for the ride. Or sometimes, as I've been listening to it at night, it's just, just let it just ride and go through the journey, go through all of the songs and enjoy it. So hopefully this was a better presentation or re-examining of the Emancipation. I have a video on YouTube that you can find on the Amari Communications channel. Sort of a cheesy video production thing I tried to do. To me, not very good. I mean, it got the information across, but I don't know. Hopefully this is a better, presentation for the case for this to be a classic Prince album. It definitely deserves to be mentioned along the lines of a lot of his other classic albums, especially with the 90s. Like I said, Gold Experience gets a lot of love, and trust me, you've heard me talk about this on the show about how we need the Gold Experience to come back. We need that reissued and deluxe edition of that too. I would say more so than Emancipation. But again, this was his first step, his first victory. So for everybody that challenges, that are cheerleaders for the whole 2000s era, for those that were drinking the musicology Kool-Aid, real music, real musicians. The thing was, the whole media thing was he's back, even though he didn't go anywhere. But, the Greatest Hits Tour, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that was vindication. Okay, that was vindication. And then everything after that was, now we know, now you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm going to keep putting that in effect. And all the way up until 2014, when he got his masters back, he was still fighting the fight. But this Emancipation album was the first step in that evolution. And we'll just sign off on this episode by saying, just give it a chance. Give it a chance. And also I want to hear your thoughts on Emancipation, your memories, your thoughts on it, your favorite songs on it. Do you think it's one of his best albums? Is it a classic? Is it a 90s classic? Do you recognize it for what it is? It's the first step. Do you think it should have gone a lot farther if a lot of events in Prince's life didn't happen? Or they didn't turn out tragic? What if everything turned out well, that they had a healthy child and, they were able to keep their marriage going? What do you think? Leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts. And that is going to end this episode of Amari Purple Talk. So tune in again next week. And remember to download on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell on YouTube. Also, don't forget to purchase Amari Communications gear, merchandise, t-shirts, coffee mugs. Christmas is coming. If you got those Secret Santa things, and if you got a musician amongst your coworkers, get some Amari Communications stuff. If you are an Amari Purple Talk fan, there's Amari Purple Talk t-shirts. So gear up. And I know the whole global supply chain. So, look, don't stress yourselves out if it doesn't get there by Christmas. Just look at it as whatever you open for Christmas, cool. Anything that comes after that, it's a bonus. Just celebrate the fact that you got people that love you and that, they're still around, they're still breathing, and hopefully living their best life as well as yours. Or, let them be the inspiration for you to live your best life as well. So, but anyway, all of that helps to keep this show going, to produce more episodes. I'm probably going to need some more gear at some point to create even better episodes and better content for YouTube as well. So buying a t-shirt, coffee mug, water bottle, all of that helps. And I appreciate you guys for tuning in every week. And we'll see you next week. And until then, peace. Time to get on the one. Keep it on the one. So we're all the purple party people that